Hey, I'm Sage Plays. Welcome back to Jurassic World Northwest, where today we're going to be building a Triassic forest and introducing our first predators. Last week we built our desert dome, and the addition of our synapsids means that we finally have over 400 guests in the park, and that means we can unlock the wide paths that we wanted. So we'll head over to our science center, get those researched, and then we can get rid of all of these overcrowded areas in the park, which will increase our guests' happiness and help to get us the money we need to build today's Triassic forest. The first thing we're going to do today is build the plaza that the beginning area is going to sit in. This is the join between the entrance plaza and the beginning. And what I want is for it to start off with the kind of foliage you'd expect to see in the Pacific Northwest, and then merge into the sort of foliage that you would see back in the Permian era, namely calamites, cycads and ferns. And then later on in the area we're going to build the Triassic forest, which will be full of conifers, which first arrived on the planet at around that time. Something else I found out in my research is that in the Permian era the Earth was covered in reddish rocks, which were full of I think it was copper or possibly iron, which is why they were red. So we're going to use some of the desert rocks which have a kind of reddish hue and fill some of the area in with those. I've recolored the paths to give it a kind of sandy texture, which is what we're going to have throughout this area to represent the deserty conditions of the Permian. And then we're going to line the edges of some of the paths with some small rocks as well, just because they look a lot more interesting than the curbs that the game gives you by default. The actual plaza is going to be built entirely out of paths. One of my favorite things to do in Jurassic World Evolution 3, probably one of everyone's favorite things to do in this game, especially if you're used to playing Planet Zoo, is the ability to just paint paths wherever you want. So we're going to have a really nice curved area here, which will take people from the entrance plaza to the desert dome and then past it and into the Triassic forest, where we're going to have our first predatory dinosaur habitat in the park for the Herrerasaurus. More on those later. For now, we're going to finish off this plaza. It's going to be all sinuous curves the whole way around, and once we've drawn the outline, we'll fill the rest of it in with more path and leave some gaps for patches of forest and rocks and things like that. There was a lot of comments on the last episode about how I size up my habitats. I showed you that briefly. So later on in the video, I'm going to take you through exactly how I get the habitat sizes correct. This little area here is the first part of our Triassic forest, and that's going to extend into the Herrerasaurus habitat, which we've laid out here. So it's all going to be surrounded with conifers, so it gives the effect that you're walking through the deserty Permian area, and then you walk down this path through the middle of the forest and end up at the Herrerasaurus in the Triassic. So we've got a viewing gallery in. This is going to be a more traditional kind of Jurassic World Evolution style habitat that's actually got a viewing gallery attached to it. And then throughout this area, to join everything up nicely, we're going to add in loads of dead trees. We'll use decals to get some cracks and imperfections in the ground everywhere, just to make it more realistic. And finally, we're going to embed some dinosaur bones into these rocks, just because I think it looks cool. Once we've got the rocks filled with bones, then that is the plaza complete, and we can take a look at it. It's a big area, and I'm really pleased with how it looks, and we're going to be adding a few more bits into it later. But now it's time for the dinosaurs. This is the hatchery complex that we built back in episode 1, and you can see it's split into two now. On this side, we've got the extra hypsilophodons waiting for their habitat, and on the other side is where I measure out the habitats. So we're going to send our expedition team off to get some Herrerasaurus DNA, and once we've researched and created those, we're going to release them into this second part of the habitat. What we do then is use wall pieces to gradually shrink the habitat until we get to the smallest size where we can see that our Herrerasaurus are still happy and they've got everything that they need. And once we've got that smaller size, we just turn it into a box, copy it, and then place it down wherever we're going to be building our habitat, and now we know how big to make it. With the logistics done, it's time to start making this look good. So we're going to start with the viewing gallery here. What I want is for it to look like it's emerging from the forest and try and get away from the boxy look of the default blueprint that we have here. We're going to have all sorts of roots and branches sticking out the front of it. We're going to have a bio roof on it, and we're going to use various wood pieces to construct the building itself. I've already mentioned the lack of roots in this game, so we're going to use some upside down dead trees to do that job for us. And then we'll put a sign in here using some of the wetlands pieces with their really interesting wood shapes. Ignore the text here. I decided I didn't like this, so we go with a much more simple, just a Herrerasaurus sign later on. But we want to make sure this sits in nicely with this archway that we've built here. That's just a couple of fence pieces, and now we're going to use some of the smaller wood pieces to give it a bit more body. So we'll just take this little piece and run this up and along underneath the fence pieces. We'll also need to cover up the metal in those fence pieces there as well, so we'll use some plants to do that. Some of the upside down bushes to cover up a few of them, and then we'll use some ivy as well. This will all be mixed in with more foliage later on to make it look more natural. If you're enjoying this, by the way, don't forget to hit the like button, it really helps the channel out. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you can see the rest of the series. That's all the planting done on the arch. Let's move up and add some onto the roof. We'll cover that with arrowwood bushes and bracken and a few other plants to make it look nice and natural, and then we'll move on to the main part of the building. So we're going to put one of the broken stone walls at the bottom. There's a really nice corner piece here where all the bricks are falling away, and then we've got a longer piece that we can join that onto here. Make it look like the bottom of the building is made of old brick, and then the rest of it will be completely made out of wood. Going to mainly be using the pieces from the wetlands pack. Absolutely love the wood pieces in that pack. We'll put some of these big broken ones on, and then we're going to use this little door piece. I think it's a door, or maybe it's a window shutter. We're going to hide that behind the wood just so that you can't see any of the original building poking through, and just copy that along the length of the building. And for the big blue girders that are part of the basic building, those will be covered up with some big thick wooden beams. We're going to have some of those angled forward so the building isn't just a basic rectangle. The top of the building is sort of closer to the path than the bottom of the building. I want to use loads of different types of viewing throughout this park, both the ones that we have in the game and then implied ones like we did for the Hypsilophodon and Lystrasaurus habitats. But for this habitat, I think the viewing gallery is appropriate. It's a fairly small habitat, and with just this little wooden building nestled in amongst all the conifers, I think it's going to be a really effective way to view the habitat. We've got the basics of the building in now, so we're just going to do some detailing on the front, give that sign some support, and then we're going to cover the whole front of the building in ivy so that we get some nice green mixed in with all the different brown shades of the wood. Just makes it look more interesting, and it helps to meld it into the forest that we have next to it. You can see we've got our new sign in now. I much prefer that one. It's all just made using the decal font pieces. And then to spruce up the front a little bit, we're going to add in one of the fossil displays. Pretty sure this is like a T-Rex or something, but it will do for the Herrerasaurus. One of the things we don't have in this game is signs for every single dinosaur, which, considering how many dinosaurs there are in the game already, is not that surprising. Although, certainly for DLC dinosaurs, I think it would be cool for Frontier to add signs for each dinosaur. But it doesn't really bother me that every dinosaur in the base game doesn't have its own sign. We'll make do with other signs when necessary. And there we go, that's the viewing gallery done, nestled away in the forest there. And let's move on to the habitat. So I want two types of viewing into this habitat. The obvious one through the viewing gallery that we just built, and then I also want you to be able to see the Herrerasaurus even when you're just walking through the plaza with no fences or anything like that in between you and the dinosaurs. So it almost looks like they could just kind of wander over and eat you if they wanted. So to achieve that, we're going to create a dry moat along most of the front of the habitat, which would prevent the dinosaurs from being able to get out without obstructing the view of the guests. So we'll make a sheer 4-meter tall wall that they wouldn't be able to climb or jump on the guest side, and then a sloping wall of the same height on the habitat side so that the dinosaurs don't hurt themselves if they fall in. Not that they're going to be doing anything that acrobatic in this game. And then we'll attach a grass panel to the guest side of things so that when we sink this down into the ground, it will blend in perfectly with the terrain surrounding it, because as you'll see when we dig out the terrain in this game, there's no way to do it sort of with surgical precision. It's always a circle of terrain that gets dug out, so it's impossible to do it in such a way that you get a completely sharp edge. So the grass panels will make sure that it all still looks nice and tidy when it's done. We don't need a moat in front of the viewing gallery. We want the dinosaurs to come right up to this glass, so we'll fill that back in, and then we're going to put the fences in. Now obviously we can build completely custom fences in this game, and I intend to do a lot of that, but I really love the classic Jurassic Park fences. They are so iconic. So in a few habitats, and this is one of them, I want to use those. These puny fences are not sufficient to keep a Herrerasaurus in though, so we're going to head back to the Science Centre and research some much heavier duty fences. We'll do the medium and the large electric fences for now, so we can make sure that our Herrerasaurus are contained. They'll be almost completely hidden with all the conifers that we're going to plant in front of it, but they'll just peek through here and there and give you those kind of Jurassic Park vibes. The fences only need to go up to the edges of the moat. That will stop the dinosaurs going any further. And later on, we're going to use some rocks around the viewing gallery to block off that part of it. And now we can start making the terrain more interesting. So we'll use the roughen tool, and then we'll raise the terrain at the back of the habitat to make better viewing for the guests. And then we're going to use rocks to join together the lower and the higher parts of the terrain. Now this always looks good, but there's a bit of an issue, which is that you've kind of got two choices. If you leave collision on, the dinosaurs can't walk over the rocks, which massively reduces their traversable area and causes the habitat to end up being too small for them. Or if you turn collision off, then you can see their feet sinking into them as they walk around. I've gone with the second option here and put the rocks as low as possible to combat that, But I'm going to be honest, I'm just not happy with how it looks. 90% of the time they look awesome in here, but 10% of the time they look kind of weird when their feet sink into the rocks. So I think I'm going to come back and replace the rocks with rock texture and see what that looks like, and maybe we'll do that in future habitats. That's the water in and looking good. We'll just finish off planting the rest of the conifers in and around the habitat, and then we'll finish off the barriers with some big rock work next to the viewing gallery. Make sure this doesn't clip into the viewing gallery, get everything in the right position, and that's going to block the dinosaurs from getting out. And now the dry moat, these rocks and the fences will keep the habitat secure. Onto the final detailing now. We'll have some more upside down bushes draping over the top of the moat to tie that in better to the rest of the habitat. We'll cover the moat itself in crack decals and dirt and puddles to make it look more realistic. And then we'll move on to the final thing that we need to do in the habitat, which is a little indoor for the dinosaurs. It was pretty warm in the early Triassic when the Herrerasaurus lived, so presumably they will need somewhere to go indoors when it's cold. So we're going to build a decent sized, but not particularly large building here where they could go inside. Large enough that it's not going to cause them issues, but small enough that they're going to prefer being outside and provide better visibility for the guests. This is going to be really simple, just the chuck-em pieces, big gate, and we'll plant more trees in front of it to make sure that it can't really be seen from the viewing gallery. You can see it's really visible there, hence the need for more trees. That's not a problem, as long as there's a little pathway where a vehicle or staff member could get in and out. We can get away with some more trees around there. There we go, you can barely see it now. Put a really simple roof on it, just with some corrugated pieces, and then we'll use a fence piece to create a kind of anti-climb, anti-jump barrier at the top of it, where we don't have any of the Jurassic Park style fence. With that done, we'll just detail it up with a door and a few windows, so it looks like there's a kind of keeper part on one side and then the dinosaurs part on the other. We'll get a gate in so that our rangers and the MVU can get in here. And something we don't need to do, but I think it makes the park look much more realistic, is to add paths in between the habitat and the admin buildings. We don't need those, all the vehicles will happily drive through forests, but it looks much more realistic if they've got actual pathways between the habitats. And speaking of the vehicles, we've got an issue in the park, although it's one I'm quite happy to solve myself whenever it arises. For some reason, even though the heat map tells us that the vehicles can happily get into our desert dome, they always seem to get stuck on their way to doing their maintenance checks on the viewing dome in the Dimetrodon habitat. So once every few days, I have to drive in manually on our little maintenance cart here and inspect it myself. But to be honest, driving around your parks once you've built them is one of my favourite things to do in this game, so I'm quite happy to do that manually. And weirdly, once I've got there, if I then exit the vehicle, our little dude here will quite happily drive out of the building and back to the maintenance centre. That's the habitat complete. We've got one more little thing we're going to build today, which is going to be a lot of fun. Back in our little patch of Triassic forest, I thought it'd be really cool to build something that we've never done in this game before, which is an implied habitat. So in the early Triassic, there were all sorts of proto-mammals and proto-reptiles, some of which were really small. So I thought we'd build a little habitat, like the kind you might keep a squirrel in a zoo, that would go on the edge of this forest and look like it had something in it. And for fun, we're going to build it with as few pieces as possible. So this little enclosure is going to be built with just 12 pieces. I noticed these fence pieces here, which are circular. If we just join 4 of those together, it gives us a nice kind of cylindrical little habitat here. And most of the kind of tiny little animals that you'd put in a little enclosure like this tend to be able to climb, whether they're little mammals like squirrels or little lizards and things like that. So I thought we'd put some climbing in here. We've got these 4 fence pieces to form the main part of the habitat. We've got a little gravel piece at the bottom, which we've coloured to look like sand. We've got an upside down planter at the top for the roof. We've got 1 dead tree in it for the animals to climb, and then we're just going to use a couple of the shutter pieces to make a little nesting box. And the size of this box will show you exactly how tiny the animal that would be in here would be. These wooden pieces are really useful, they're so small, and they've already got kind of hinges and things on them, so they are full of detail. One last piece to place at the bottom, and that's our nesting box done. We will attach this to the side of the enclosure, add on our information sign, and there we go. And we can check out our completed beginning area. I've added some more detail onto the entrance archway. And here's the whole area. Got one of the maps from the wetland pack in there as well, so people know where they're going. Our first guests are making their way into the Triassic forest part of the area now. And you can see one of the Herrerasaurus, exactly how we want them there. Let's check out the view from the viewing gallery. Here we go. You can barely see the indoor habitat. We've got a little goat running around for them. Big fan of the Herrerasaurus. I made them green, kind of classic dinosaur colouring. I figure as an early dinosaur, maybe crazy colour schemes hadn't evolved yet, although I have no idea if that's correct or not. Just seemed like the right thing to do. And that's our first major area in the park complete. Thank you so much for watching as always. I'll see you next week where we're going to start a much bigger area. See you then.